as guidance for growing, and we have a history of continuous growth. I was employee number 18 when I joined 6 years ago, and I think we're up to 170 employees at this point. So the service highlights are the main things we bring to the market, include SOC as a service. So we've been doing this for, I think, 8 years. It's 24/7 monitoring with the 3 security operation centers. We focus on actionable alerts. We can do Proficio Cloud or a client-owned SIEM if it's Splunk, and then we do have built-in threat intelligence to the platform. This is about, I'd say 98% of our customers, our clients have this service, and this is the main thing we bring to the market. Beyond this, we add on what's called a security dashboard, what you say ProView. It's a front end called Splunk. It's a very unique way of how we present and tune the service. So we call that ProView. We can demonstrate that, but it's kind of a unique thing we have as part of the service, and it really brings a lot of value. Then as far as other services we do provide, we do manage security services. We do manage SIEM and consulting around SIEM. We do manage firewall, managed IDPS, managed content filtering, and sometimes managed VPN. I'd say it's about 30% of our clients subscribe to some type of managed security services. So it's about a third of our client base. And then incident response. The main thing we do is automated response. So there's traditional MSSP providers that provide alerting, but then you move into what's called MDR, managed detection and response. We have been doing response at the network perimeter for about 6.5 years, and we've been doing response at the endpoint for about 3 years. About 30% of our customers have some sort of response, so it's a big part of the service. So again, this is the main thing, the SOC as a service, as you kind of discussed. That is what we provide to many of our clients, almost all of our clients. And then about 30% managed security services, and about 30% some type, at least one type of response. Any questions here?
That's cool.
That's cool.
Gotcha. The security operations centers, and this is important because data residency is usually huge in the clients you discuss. We have headquarters in San Diego, California, in the United States. We have a SOC in Barcelona, and then we're moving a lot of presence to the UK. And we have a SOC in Singapore. These 3 SOCs allow us to position kind of the 8 to 5 in the localities of the continents, and it allows us to kind of retain top talent in those regions. When you have a 24/7 SOC in a local region, it's very hard to get people to work at 3 in the morning on Christmas or 3 in the morning on Sunday. This follow the sun type of schedule allows us to retain top talent and have our analysts work 8 to 5 in each region, because you do get that. Why do you have a global presence? And the data residency, so we have the services we can provide for fully managed SOC. The data residency, I think, is in Frankfurt, Germany, in AWS. So the event data resides in the EU, and then we use ServiceNow Cloud, which usually that's the alert data. I think ServiceNow Cloud, right, the United States, but usually the event data is the big thing. The data residency has to retain in the EU for many of your clients, and then also our security analysts remotely access that, so the event data does not leave the EU for that locality. Any questions here?
No, good.
Me too.
Okay. I think, Chris, I don't know if you've gone over this. I think you're kind of aware. We have industry analyst recognition by Forrester and Gartner. For Gartner, we're a recognized MDR provider. It's a little bit different than the Gartner Magic Quadrant for MSSP, MDR. There isn't a Magic Quadrant yet, because usually you start off with recognized organizations and then you move to a Magic Quadrant as things become more structured. So again, how we position it, MSSP is traditional alerting without response. We're on the Gartner recognized MDR, which is managed detection and response, where we can take action. It's just part of a security incident. So it's kind of the evolution of an MSSP. So some MSSPs are MDR providers. In order to be an MDR provider, you need to provide response and alerting. That makes sense. And then, of course, we have a variety of awards that you can reference, that we can detail, that giving us credibility as far as our organization goes. How our services are split up. It's essentially 3 parts: managed, detection, and response. So for management, leveraging ITIL to manage a Palo Alto firewall, manage a Cisco firepower firewall, manage a SIM, right? So we file ITIL best practices and have management types of services. Then there's the detection as a service. So taking a lot of information from a variety of endpoints or a variety of log sources, whether it be firewalls, endpoints, cloud or SaaS-based services, and turning that into actionable alerts. That's kind of the detect. And then response. It's the automated response, what we call active defense for Cisco firewalls, managed detection and response, RBVM, which we call risk-based vulnerability management, leveraging Qualys, variety of things. But essentially, these are the three logical buckets that our services live at. And you can, any service we have, you can kind of see if it's managed detection or response. Any questions here?
Not so far. I'll let you.
Gotcha. So the architecture, so we do a co-managed Splunk service. Many large companies have bought Splunk and they can't operationalize it. The main issues are they can't monitor it 24/7 and they can't get it down to actionable alerts they actually engage. And then they're at risk of missing something significant. So that's one part. But when a client does not have a SIM, what they do is they subscribe to our fully managed cloud services, and it's a very unique blend of pieces of architecture that give a best-of-breed solution, and it's really unique. I think it's a lot. The technology stack is a lot more interesting and better than a lot of our competitors that provide similar services. How it works is if the client doesn't have a Splunk system and he wants to use a fully managed cloud SIM, they have CentOS VMs, Linux-based VMs. They stand up in their environment, and we collect logs, whether it be syslog, Windows domain controller. We can make API calls for SaaS-based services. We pull those down, collect those logs, and then send those to our universal messaging bus. It's called Kafka, and that'll be in the EU. We have 3 different places we can do it, 4 actually. We can do it in Australia, Singapore, United States, or EU. For our EU customers, right, Frankfurt, Germany, and AWS, we're sending the logs to that messaging bus there, and then the messaging bus distributes the logs to a variety of different places to provide a lot of different functions, whether it be threat intelligence and different things. Alerts from those devices and systems are sent to ServiceNow for ticketing, and that's where case processing is done.
So if I could just, on that slide, if you go back one.
Mm-hmm.
The ProSoc VM you said is a CentOS instance. So
yes.
it's a physical or virtual instance that sits on the client side on the customer's estate.
99% of the time, yeah, it's virtual. Almost never physical anymore, but yes.
Okay, so that CentOS system, is that have you got your own proprietary software loaded on or installed onto that CentOS?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. It's commercial and some proprietary types of configurations. So right now, data collection for correlation and log normalization is Micro Focus's ArcSight smart connectors. But then we also leverage for SOAR and response. We have Ansible scripts and different Ansible feeding scripts and different things that we've developed in-house that kind of do that. And then we'd be moving to Logstash for the consumer side as well for log collection soon. But
sure,
yes,
yeah.
It's a combination of both, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was an area that piqued my interest because traditionally collecting telemetry from all of the different things that you've got there, firewalls, endpoints, servers, cloud infrastructure, that's quite difficult.
Oh yeah.
So I was just intrigued as to whether that was your own proprietary, but you've got ArcSight in there. You've also tied in with Splunk. Is there any other technology that isn't proprietary under the hood?
Yeah, so I think that'd be good to kind of discuss. Here's kind of what we're dealing with when we talk about the unique technology stack. So the previous slide was kind of high level. So again, CentOS VM to the messaging bus Kafka, and then this kind of describes the functions, but let's talk about under the hood what's actually there. All right, so we talk about the event collection, which is CentOS VM. We load ArcSight smart connectors that give us the ability to tap into McAfee EPO or tap into Windows or tap into, it's hundreds of different devices. And if we move away from that, we're obviously going to depend on that type of provider, because trying to do that in-house and build all the different collections for every single security device isn't really feasible. But we do have an R&D team, by the way, that does build out custom consumers if an API doesn't exist or things happen. And we've done that for, say, Salesforce, Vox, Okta, you know, a variety of different SaaS-based services. But essentially, once you collect those logs in a normalized format and then they're distributed to the event bus, here's how we kind of break apart the event logs. So these four on the left are consumers of the log data. You consume it in Elastic because Elasticsearch has essentially the fastest log search form, with the exception of Splunk there. So our clients get access to Elastic where you can search logs. For long-term storage requirements, we put it into Hadoop. So we have 3 months online in Elastic and then 9 months offline in Hadoop to get a year log retention, which is in line with most compliance requirements. Then you have the ArcSight for correlation, right? ArcSight's got a tremendously great real-time correlation engine. Where it lacks, Elasticsearch kind of helps us out there with search, but we've got hundreds of correlation use cases built based on many years for a variety of different technology types. So this is kind of where we started and what we still have. And then, of course, you can only do so much of the traditional correlation engine. You actually need to do things with you know, artificial intelligence, a subset of that, right? Machine learning. So we have model-based detection and pattern X. So this helps us detect outliers and thresholds that static correlation rules can't detect. And then Splunk is here, but we can kind of demonstrate how it's kind of done there. But you can replace this technology stack with Splunk. If the client owns Splunk, we can leverage their forwarders, indexers, and search heads as the correlation, the collection, the search, and the correlation. These systems feed ServiceNow for alerting, and that's how client gets access to that for case management. And then the front end, like we talked about, is Splunk. It's ProView Plus. So I mean, this is a tremendously complex technology stack. You asked yourself why we did that. Well, we started off with just ArcSight about 10 years ago, and we tried to make it do case management, search, correlation. And we found that there's deficiencies in any product you have. You know, Elastic is kind of weaker in correlation. ArcSight is weak in search and case management. ServiceNow is great for SOAR and case management, but it's not a SIM and it can't do log searching. You know, so we had to add all these technology stacks. So the client's getting the best of breed, and it's nearly impossible for them, for the price and the complexity to manage, to stand this up on their own, unless they have a significant you know, skill of personnel and investment in technology and software. So, you know, for the price they get, there's tremendous value in our technology stack. Any questions?
No, I got it.
All right. All right, so a few things that are embedded in the platform as well. A lot of clients buy dedicated standalone threat intelligence sources, like I think ThreatStream, Anomaly, or whatever it's being called these days, right? So yeah, we embed our TIP in there, Threat Intelligence Profiler. We have scripts that pull down sources of intelligence, and then it pushes through scripting and applications to our Splunk and ArcSight SIMs, and then it's used as a building block for correlation against our use cases. So threat intelligence is included. We do have some flexibility where the client may have custom threat intelligence sources that maybe they're members of that we can't access as a commercial for-profit provider, and we have the flexibility to take in through Stix and Taxi those threat intelligence actually integrated in with the service, but this is one of the value adds as well. That's difficult to manage when you're standalone with the client. We are not just an MSSP, but we're MDR as well. So the response portion, what does that look like? So again, what we've been doing for many years is integrating with firewalls. Before SOAR kind of came out with the Misto and Swim Lane and Phantom, we were doing this years before with Cisco ASAs and Junipers, essentially blacklisted IPs or network recon or different types of correlation use cases. The client would put, I don't want to know about this. I just want you to block the IP. Just please do that for us. I don't want to wake up at 3 in the morning and block an IP address that's banging away. So we've been doing this for about 7 years. These are some of the firewalls supported. What's great too is we used to have to, for a few vendors, we still have to do this. The only integration they have is we have to send commands to our ProSoC VM and then run SSH scripts to block the IP addresses. There's dynamic lists now where we can take AWS WAF and update a block list, or Palo Alto with an external dynamic list and update that list with the IP address. And then you can have 2 or 100 firewalls subscribed. And that one change from our ProSoC VM will distribute out to the entire controls. So this is our most common response package, and we've been doing it for years. We kind of have it down. Then we have EDR, right? We have managed detection and response for Carbon Black, for CrowdStrike, for Trend Micro XDR. We do have managed FIM with Wazoo to meet PCI requirements, but essentially the main thing you're getting there is you identify something's infected, so you say, okay, we'd like to quarantine that endpoint as a containment action, and then perform incident response. So we do that at the endpoint. Then of course down here, the thing that vendors are going to be moving to is SaaS-based response. If an IP is attacking you in Office 365 and spraying 100 credentials, you want to take action on that. But if you take action on your on-premise firewalls, it doesn't do anything because it's in the cloud. So there's a lot of security controls for SaaS-based orchestration that's going to be that providers are going to be moving towards, and that's what we're kind of looking towards next. Any questions there?
So I see you got CrowdStrike on there. I know that they have a service, I think it's called Overwatch. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I understand that what is it? I've just Googled it, but I should have kept it up. Have you heard of that before? CrowdStrike Overwatch?
Yeah.
So you probably know more than me how that differs to your own service. That's a threat hunting service. So what's the comparison there, or?
Yeah, so CrowdStrike has several layers of services, and Overwatch is, I think there's 4 layers of services. The first layer, you can just get the CrowdStrike AV. Second layer, you can get the CrowdStrike AV and EDR. Third layer, I think, is Overwatch with the EDR, and the fourth layer is what they call Falcon Complete. So the third layer with Overwatch, which is the most common what we see, what they do kind of is Overwatch deals with what they call the targeted detections, the breach detections. So they kind of don't deal with the everyday conventional malware and different things. They just kind of let it sit there. They don't engage those alerts. But when there's an opportunity to upsell incident response and be involved in a breach, that's when Overwatch becomes involved and sends alerts. So the alerts from Overwatch are very few, but when they are, they're super serious. There's usually a breach involved, and then they may engage with incident response. The one that is the equivalent that we do, where we kind of take a step back, is Falcon Complete. That's when they process and do managed detection response for all alerts. That's the highest tier. Is usually more expensive. When we have a client that has Falcon Complete, they're providing it only based on the endpoint. They only have visibility to the endpoint. So what we do is we say, great, we can work that, have them do managed detection and response, but we're still going to ingest the CrowdStrike alerts. And what we're going to do with the CrowdStrike alerts is we're going to take those alerts and we're going to try to tell you what else we see with the Windows logs of who was logged in, with the firewalls. So we'll take in all the CrowdStrike alerts as well, and we'll try to provide you some actionable alerts in there with the full visibility of what's going on. If CrowdStrike says they're command and control, we can tell you if it's being blocked by the firewall. If CrowdStrike says there's malware in an endpoint, we can tell you who was logged in and try to give you this full picture. So regardless of what tier of service they have for CrowdStrike, we do provide value. If they have Falcon Complete, then we usually don't sell the MDR service, and we just do detection as a service and give them alerts from the SIM with full visibility of all the logs they have. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right, and this is kind of an architectural diagram of how it works with active defense. The main thing is we collect data from security controls. Those logs go into ProSoC VMs. When those correlation use cases trigger, we send a command to the ProSoC VM, the CentOS VM, and then we update the security controls. So it's kind of this configuration that works out pretty well for us. I don't know if you have any questions, but any other questions regarding response or anything else we can answer?
No, I mean, conceptually, it all seems pretty straightforward. It's quite interesting looking at this. So I don't know if you know much about Panda as a vendor, but I used to work there. They have an EDR solution, much like the CrowdStrike stuff, that acts as a telemetry sensor and feeds the telemetry into third-party SIEMs using Leaf and Ceph format. But you guys are obviously taking that data and turning it into a managed service as opposed to detection and response. So yes, it's good. It's good to see. You said around your detection, your telemetry sensors being ArcSight connectors. But then I take it you guys are relatively flexible with regards to where the data actually comes from. You can accept a lot of different data feeds and correlate that and triage that in your systems.
Yep, ArcSight covers our bases for many of the most difficult ones, right? Cisco ASA has 900 different syslog messages. Windows has hundreds of different Windows messages, or hundreds of different types of messages. So the vendors have done all that dev work to take in some of the most difficult popular security controls. And then we cover, I'd say, about the 5% that doesn't work with that vendor. So, you know, and so, yeah, it's a combination of both. And I don't want to say rarely, but we don't often find too many log sources that are very popular that we can't ingest the logs. If they're able to be sent in some way, shape, or form, then we're able to do it. The difficulties we're finding is everything is moving to SaaS-based and API. So it's not just getting sent the logs and slicing it up with regular expressions or making sure it's in Ceph and Leaf, right? It's building the API to reach out and then collect the logs. A lot of these vendors are updating their APIs and breaking a lot of those things. So then you have to redo all the development. So that's one of the things that vendors are dealing with on a frequent basis. And it's not just us, it's also SIM vendors to keep that as well. But we've dealt with that challenge and we've done pretty well on doing that. So we have a support for a wide variety of log sources.
So we've had a look under the hood. What does all of this actually conceptually look like to a customer, someone who's bought into the service? What do they tangibly actually have from it? Because many of these services suffer from the difficulty of demonstrating the value. A job well done often goes unnoticed in IT because from the customer's perception, everything's working fine. What they don't realize is everything's working fine because you've got all of these services in place, all of these solutions and all this technology that's doing a great job and has actually saved your skin, time and time again. So with that in mind, tangibly, what does the customer see?
Okay. Well, I mean, we got plenty of other slides, but I can jump into a demonstration real quick and show you what that looks like. Would that work?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, absolutely. Yep. Okay. All right. So we talked about the security stack. We can demo certain things, but the things that demo well is usually explaining the functions between these two. This is what the clients tangibly touch, along with Kibana or the search. And I can show you the Kibana interface. Actually, I'll jump in there, but unfortunately, I don't have recently any sanitized logs where I can show you the search, but it's Kibana. So if you're familiar, you've seen an Elasticsearch interface. We have a customized version of that. So just give me a minute and I can actually show you all three things. And this will give you an idea of what the client actually tangibly gets out of the service. And sorry, I'm just moving towards.
Brian, just while you're doing that, Michael, a quick question. So do you see that there might be some synergies or some value in regard to positioning Proficio alongside the Panda technology solution that you have?
Potentially. I mean, obviously, it's all hypothetical at the moment, but North Amber is positioning itself to be a pretty key partner with the Panda technology. Obviously, having WatchGuard being a long-standing partner of North Amber, and then WatchGuard acquiring Panda and all of their UK-based customers, They've got probably in the remit of 500 MSPs and resellers that they basically bought through that acquisition. And all of them already have the infrastructure of Panda's endpoint software deployed, delivering telemetry. So perhaps there is an opportunity there. If you guys can tap into that telemetry, then there's a customer base that already have the software deployed for the endpoints. But obviously that's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
But that's the situation.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
So again, the technology stack, there's three things the client touches. The log search is elastic. So we have our own custom version of Kibana that actually provides a service. It's two-factor authentication, and then you're in with your own space with a multi-tenancy, and then you can perform discovery and log search. Again, I don't have the logs available, but you could search Palo and everything would immediately come up, and then you have your own dashboards. So again, it's a great service to have your own type of fast log search. You can do a 2-week key, with collecting millions of events, what we've clocked it at sometimes, keyword search for a user, under 10 seconds. So it's tremendously fast, 30 to 40 times faster than what we've seen from other SIM platforms such as ArcSight. So this is a tremendous service. So that's one piece. The second piece is our analytics platform. So this is what kind of ties together with the tactical and strategic metrics that try to provide value to the client. So the first one, kind of a tactical one, the main thing that clients suffer from when they stand up their own SIM solutions or EDR solution is alert fatigue. The vendors, they customize it to try to do the best they can, but a lot of times either there's a lack of alerts or there's too many alerts. And if you think about it, why the vendors kind of go through that when they design software for security controls, you have clients that have 30,000 employees, and then you have clients that have 25 employees, and you have to make the software with that one configuration work for all of them. And what we find is the vendors fall short with that, especially when you're dealing with next-gen firewalls, EDR products, SaaS-based products. So again, we discussed how we have hundreds of use cases, and what's key to our success is if we can get down to 5 to 10 actionable alerts a day for the client, where everything is interesting, and we're providing them a variety of visibility to a lot of security controls. So in this particular case, we're moving back a year to date on a sample data set of alerts and notifications. But the thing to note here, and this is my favorite view right here, is kind of the correlation use case triggers that are happening. You've got your file integrity monitoring, you've got your next-gen firewall, you have your general network use cases. So we have a combination of hundreds of use cases. We stand them up, the client throws the logs at us. Sometimes there's too little, sometimes there's too many. And we discuss with the client through our services on a weekly basis during onboarding and monthly during production, kind of all the alerts that are happening and where they're spending the most time and how to tune it. So what you find is, and then this should just come up in a second, where we're going back a year or so. But essentially, what you're seeing is an increase in July and August. There's two use cases that are causing a lot. We're seeing a lot of, say, the next-gen AV in their environment. Systems are repeatedly, a single system within a 48 period is showing two pieces of malware, and it's taking up the majority of their time. What we tell them is, hey, it's these 6 files that are happening. Have you whitelisted these files? Say, no, we haven't, but in the meanwhile, can you suppress alerting? And then we make that change, and then usually that would reduce notifications by, say, 30 to 60%. The other alert notification that seems to be in an uptick is they have Wazoo, right? And maybe the data set for Wazoo, there's a couple high priority rules that are triggering on their configuration for auditing around Windows, where they have they've actually reduced or rolled over their logs in an unsafe way, and that's triggering a lot. So we kind of say, this is why you're seeing an increase here, and here's the majority of the hits. Are these interesting to you? And here's why you're seeing an increase here. Is this interesting to you? And they tell us, well, no, whitelist this or get rid of this. And normally that's how we get down to the 5 to 10 actionable alerts. You can see here we've got cloud, next-gen firewall, all these different layers of technology. In January, right, there was a next-gen firewall use case that was triggering a lot. We made changes on that. And then February, March, April, May, we were down to 5 to 10 actionable alerts. And then as you add new use cases or new log sources, use cases trigger a lot. Sometimes for bad reasons, sometimes for noise. And when we have those discussions through these analytics dashboards and discuss these things, we can get it down to actionable alerts regardless of the size of the enterprise. And that's what lacks by just deploying technologies out of the box. And that's why we're successful and continue to kind of refresh our service.
Okay.
So each one of these alerts are actually represented by an INC ticket frame, right? And this is where ServiceNow comes into play. So the client gets access to ServiceNow. This is kind of a customer test profile. But essentially how we've designed our ServiceNow is we've kind of added extra fields and customized the service where there's additional metadata for the incident records, and clients can actually drill into records by use case. And ServiceNow is great, especially for MSSPs. What you can kind of do is you have what's called an activity stream, and we're tremendously flexible for the client and what they want to do. So whenever the client will receive an alert notification, but whenever the client replies to that email alert, it'll actually embed it to the activity stream. And each time the client actually engages or updates the ticket, our SOC actually engages their response. So our analysts write up what they have, and here's an example. They write up and they get the logs, and they kind of say, here's what's going on. They'll give them the notification saying, hey, we discovered this, but we drilled down and we discovered additional proof point tap where people clicked on this malicious link. Here's these escalations. The client will receive an email notification, or they can log into ServiceNow. They can update it, and then they can go back and forth with our SOC. So they can respond to alerts directly out of the ServiceNow interface. They can respond to alerts and manage alerts out of their email, or we have one-way and two-way ticket integration. So the client, if they have their own ServiceNow, we have an API guide that actually details how to perform API integration for two-way, so they can work alerts out of their own ticketing system, or which is much more common with, say, Remedy. I think we've done Jira, all these different ticketing systems. We actually have a way to kind of so we have API with the two-way, and then we have email with a one-way. So again, with our ServiceNow, what's great is, and why we're so flexible, is they get ServiceNow. They can process cases out of our ServiceNow. If they're too overwhelmed or don't want to log in another interface, they can process alerts out of email and interact with our SOC, or we can bring it to their doorstep with ticket integration and put security alerts in their ticketing system. So via API and one-way integration. So when you have those 4 different options as a service provider for flexibility, the client designs or architects their security operations for alert processing the way they want to do it, and it works for small, large organizations, and makes us really versatile as a service provider, which is really great. And again, a lot of clients have a problem operationalizing security operations. We have runbooks, which is a living document and unique for each client, and it kind of details the service, details who can do what, details critical escalation procedures for when we'd make a phone call and how we interact with them to wake them up at 3 in the morning if something critical does happen. And we're flexible and modify this with the client over time. So a lot of versatility here, a lot of coverage, a lot of customization of the service. It's pretty hard. Not too many providers can match us here. Any questions there?
No, it's really interesting.
Gotcha.
Really
Now beyond, yeah, it's best of breed technology. It's been great. We've learned a lot of lessons over the years, and we're really happy to provide. On that, of course, we talked about some of the other metrics in here. The active defense, again, the network perimeter blocks that 30% of our clients have. What we can do is we can actually show what we've done. Now, clients, again, it's important to be flexible here, and this is test data set, but some of our clients are very aggressive with this service. We have a couple clients that say, you know what, whenever there's a permit from a blacklisted IP, I want you to block the IP for 30 days. I don't care what port it is, I don't care what country, just do it. And they'll do thousands of blocks per week. We have other clients that say, you know what, I want to be very conservative and careful on what we block. Only block the IP address if it touches these critical subnets, it's these use cases, and it's not a US-based IP, and they'll only get a couple blocks a week. So they kind of work with us to kind of modify the service and detail how many blocks and for what, right? And and then we can kind of show here's the status of the blocks and what you're blocking and what we're providing as far as value goes as a service provider. So any questions here? We kind of explained this in the PowerPoint slides earlier.
No, that's all cool. That's all good.
Yep. Now, beyond alerting and beyond response, there are events of interest that go under the bridge, if you would, that may not bubble up to alerting. And there's certain preventative measures you can take as a service provider to help the client shore up their defenses. And what we find is a lot of our clients, if you start looking at Windows failed authentications, if you start looking at VPN authentications by geolocation, if you start looking at IDPS signatures that are triggering, there's all kinds of little issues there. They may have SSH open to the world. They may have RDP open to the world. They may have a user that's VPNing in from Russia that they've never known about. They may have a service account that's failing hundreds of thousands of times every day that they didn't know about. That's causing business issues. And that's where we have interactive dashboards in this portal that kind of take event data metrics and can kind of detail event trends of interest. So we built this during COVID, and we're focused on helping the client understand their Palo Alto Global Protect, Cisco AnyConnect, Citrix authentications, and understand where people are authenticating from. Now, this is a test data set, normally for US clients, right? The majority of authentications are from the US. They have some India authentications, but then they'll have people go on vacation, and we'll just make sure that there's no one authenticating from a funny location. Now, we don't always discover compromised credentials, but do we discover people in the US giving out their credentials for other people to do work from India? You know, and we've caught that before, where someone will say, I want to pay someone in India to do my job, and then I'll just not do my job. So they give their credentials to the individual in India, and all of a sudden they're coming from India. So there's all kinds of things you find, and in analyzing those types of metrics and these event trends of interest, you maybe don't find security incidents, but you find misconfigured security controls and can help them shore up and properly configure a lot of different data. So tremendously valuable there.
Just to let you know, I've got a hard stop at 4:30, so we've got about 12 minutes left. But with all of this interface that you're showing me, obviously this is fantastic from an MSSP's perspective. Do you guys do anything with regards to actually managing that service as if you were the MSSP? So you got an MSP, for example, that doesn't necessarily have resource, time, availability, skill set to really look at an interface like this, drill down into the events, follow up on those events, and all that sort of stuff. Is that your what's your main positioning with that?
Yeah, well, it depends on the nature of how we collect the logs and what we can do. We have multi-tenancy, but will we need to white label things? You know, there's a lot of questions there. The technology staff, you can do a variety of different ways with an MSP, and we have a variety of integrations with different partners. But it depends on how much you want to white label and how we collect the logs and what the nature of the integrations we need to do to bring in the partner. But you know, we have a couple. We've given partners ServiceNow accounts. We've sent reports to the partners, but normally what they do is eventually they start off kind of being I want to interact and own the relationship with the client. Reports, alerts, everything goes to me, and then you explain to me what those alerts are and how to do it, and then I'll go to the client and present the service. What eventually happens, our experience is the partner says, you know what, I'm tired of this going back and forth. You just interface to the client, I'll own the relationship, and I'll be the client success role. So that's what we've seen in those types of situations, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I think the last dashboard we have to present, and then I think it's just open to questions for you, is the executive metrics. So the last thing we wanted to show you is the threat insight. So when we go and present to the client, when they say, I want to show the value of this service, I want to go to the executive board and detail this. If you show them the top 10 use cases, or if you show them, we blocked 100 IPs from Russia this month, executives say, great, things are going on. Wow, the service is working. but what are my gaps? What are my risks? What do I do with the budget next year? And that's where it's challenging as an MSSP with SIM dashboards and traditional metrics to show any type of actionable data. So how we've kind of done that is we know that you have certain functions for security controls, and we know that the more security controls you have, the more visibility you have to detect and prevent threats. And the majority of all these security controls can be divided up into zones, and those zones can have visibility to certain threats with those security controls. So what we've done is, based on what the client is providing us as log sources, we say, okay, here's what you have in the perimeter. You know, your next gen firewalls, web filters. Here's what you have in the endpoint. You know, whether it be FIM or whatever. Here's what you have at the core, domain controllers, different things, and then the cloud, of course, AWS, Office 365. And based on those numbers, we can take those numbers and give you a score and then bubble it to one score. And then because this is a multi-tenant system and we have over 160 clients, we can put you in a sector and we can actually do peer comparisons, or we can recommend to you what you need next to move forward as far as an organization goes. So in this particular case, there's a lot of security controls. They've got a 69. We've stuck this particular data set in retail. Average retail is 49. Our clients for over 160, 47. We have a lot of clients that can only afford to monitor next-gen firewalls, domain controllers, and Office 365. So where do we go? Well, if we want to get better at the endpoint and reduce our risks, let's look at file integrity monitoring. We already have EDR and antivirus. If we want to get better at the core, which we're the weakest, let's investigate east to west traffic or onboard our DNS trace logs from our domain controllers. And I know it's impossible to display, you know, a single dashboard to kind of detail the entire, you know, cybersecurity program of an organization, but executives function off of simple numbers. And what usually clients do is they can take these simple numbers, present these to the board, say they're validated by Proficio, and then tell their story where they say, we need Tripwire, we need to purchase Darktrace, we need more licensing in our Splunk, or you know, for the MSSP or the MDR, because we need to get better in cloud and we want to take our AWS infrastructure and onboard it. So that's kind of executive metrics and how we kind of do that at a simple level, and it's very scalable because it's automatically available for us. When we had to do this beforehand, it's 2-3 hour custom PowerPoint reports. You know, we like to do this on demand automatically. So, but that's kind of a high level. I know we got 7 minutes left. It's kind of a high level on what we have as far as the services go. What other types of questions can we answer for you?
No, that's great overview. Thank you. I think obviously that's, even though it's only an overview, it's clear that there's an awful lot of variables and moving facets to this. And the challenge that we have to position this is to try and make it as simple of offering as possible, which I know is difficult in the world of security, but it's how do we align everything so that it's a straight shot, if you get me. It's a, right, you need this, that's it, you need this, that's it type thing. Mm-hmm. But from the technical aspect, yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. What's your typical sort of partner with this? You know, your typical sort of customer?
Yes, so for partners, typically they have a relationship with a lot of clients, and mm-hmm. and they want to go to, because almost always, especially the smaller organizations, they can't afford a SIM, or the SIM is useless. Yep. And they want to bring in they want someone to make them look good, that can deliver on the services and is a trusted partner and is flexible. And a lot of times they like to bring us in because not only can we present, and usually we make it a simpler demo, right? A simple executive metrics, and don't overwhelm them with all we can do, right? Mm-hmm. We try to make it simple, and then we may scope or price, and that kind of gets the client a dollar process on what we can kind of do. And then so that's the main thing, is the smaller organizations that can't manage a SIM or monitor 24/7 by themselves, they bring us in, and even if the client doesn't want to go with our services, they learn a lot because we tell them and show them how we do things. The other thing is to clients that have a lot of Splunk clients. Splunk right now, people buy it, they pour in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, They want to use it for security operations and they can't do it. This is how we entered the market 10 years ago. Everyone had ArcSight and they couldn't leverage it or do it. The vendor got them over the line, said it'd be simple. Same thing with Splunk.
It's a familiar story that. So Panda actually has a strategic partnership with Devo, don't know how you pronounce it. So Panda have the ability to provision or contract an instance of the Devo SIEM platform, which automatically has the API set up to pull in the telemetry from the Panda endpoints. The problem is that probably 99% of the customers that buy that just end up with a huge data table and don't know how to triage the information in there or create the SQL queries to generate the alerts and so forth. So that's where the opportunity lies, is trying to make the information actionable without it just being noise. So I see that as the deliverable here. If you guys can bring something to the table that says, well, do you know what, this is the actionable alerts, and we can work through the noise till we get to a point where there's a manageable number of alerts that can integrate directly into a support desk ticketing system for people to action, that'd be the sweet spot.
Yep. And then we do partner with Devo, although albeit it's relatively recent. But yeah, that's the thing we're working on is how do we maybe help them with their use cases and alerts. We're trying to see if we can convert some of our use cases to Sigma, and they can maybe import or rule write a lot of our equivalent use cases. So that relationship with Devo may evolve, and we may actually have a lot more information for you regarding that particular subject in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, and Michael, if I can jump in here for just a second, I think you hit it on the head, and we've had a bit of a mantra with our global sales organization over the last year of being easier to buy from, and that's at multiple channels, direct. What does that look like? And as I move forward with the strategic partnership organization, it's how do we become easier to partner with? And so looking at a distribution model, again, is not something that we have in place today. But as I understand the strategy here is that in some ways you commoditize the service. You productize it, you bundle it, and you simplify as much as you can the sales process. Say what we've kind of talked about in the past is bundling based on gigabyte per day tiers, the same way that Splunk does it, and saying a 50 gigabyte bundle, 50 gigabyte per day bundle of Pro Stock is this. The next tier is 100, and anything above 100, you have to get a custom quote. That's not a pricing structure that we have in place today, but we have talked about it. I have talked to our VP of product management and how we could do that. I have a couple concerns that I'd like to, I've been looking for a sounding board to work through on this, is if we have a $500,000 quote out and our purchasing process is like a click through, is anybody going to buy that? If we say, here's 5 slides on our service, what we do, we make it like too simple. Is that going to drive the contract value down as a result?
Yep. You made some really, really good points, and I'd love to continue the conversation. Maybe that's the jump off point for the next meeting, Brian. But I've got another meeting that I need to attend, I'm afraid. But yeah, you absolutely have grasped the concept, because when you're trying to filter things through the channel, the message has to survive this game of Chinese whispers almost, so what you guys are promoting as the service needs to make its way through a number of different people and end up to the person that we actually want to sell to the same message. So you're absolutely right there. It's how do we get that process in place? But yeah, I'm gonna have to jump. So thank you very much for the overview, other Brian. That was really good. and I will leave you with Gareth.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Mike.
Michael. Michael, before you drop, I've got one question for you, and it just takes a yes or a no answer.
Yep.
Would
shoot.
you have a customer who you're working with today who you think you could have a conversation with about Proficio today?
There's one or two that I could open conversations, but
Okay.
that's skeptical. I think we need to talk more about
Yeah.
our positioning
Yeah.
before I could really answer that.
That's
But
better
yeah,
than mine.
there's opportunity here. I'm sure there's opportunity here. It's just knuckling down on exactly how, where, what. Yeah.
Okay. No,
All right.
thank
Awesome.
you, Michael.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your
Mike.
time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Gareth,
Yes.
anything else we can provide to you? Any questions we have? This is your time, so we want to make sure we give you the information you need regarding the
No,
service.
that was good for me as well. Thanks. I mean, yeah, the only questions I did have was the kind of the pricing and how it aggregated amongst the different services that you were offering. But Brian mentioned a little bit about that. Trying to get to the same way that pricing is pushed out for Splunk. But yeah, I think in another conversation, how this looks commercially would be useful. But from the technical side, I think it's exactly what we were expecting. And looks very, very solid. So.
Gareth, that's really good. What would be good is from a Panda perspective, you're reselling their managed service, and I kind of see us as a vendor anyway. So, as a vendor can sell to a distributor. Distributors go out then to the value-added reseller market, system integrator market. Then that goes down to the end client. How are you currently selling MSP services with the likes of Panda or maybe other? How does that channel work? And how do you see yourself being compensated? Because obviously at the end of the day, if it's a managed service, we kind of hold the contract with the end user, so we're providing like a dual channel pass through.
Yeah, I mean, in those situations, we are effectively selling through the services. So we have a number of partners who will be buying services from us that are on premise or maybe slightly in the cloud SaaS solutions now. But we want to have the opportunity to offer them something that is managed around that. And then we effectively just resell that through. Where we've got more of the skill sets around Panda, we've got sales specialists, technical specialists. We're able to offer a lot more in terms of pre-sales and positioning around that, which is where we would want to get to with all of the services that we're offering as well. But effectively, yeah, we are selling this through in what would be hopefully become a combination of overall services from North Amber.
Okay. What would you like to do as next steps? I mean, I think from discussion that we just recently had, I think maybe another follow-up technical discussion might be needed. But I think, from our side of things with yourself, I think we need to have that commercial discussion in regard to, how does that cost and revenue model work for you?
Yep.
Like I say, it'd be good to sort of see maybe how you work with the other partners, what level of margin you take, how you actually transact the business with those guys. Like Brian was saying, is we currently don't have this model in role and in place with the disti. So, we're looking to try and kind of be creative where possible to make it work for both yourselves and ourselves.
Yep.
So we're not trying to sell something to you that we've got with multiple other partners. Is how do we create that model that is worth value and benefit to the both of us to drive business?
Yeah, and we're flexible around that as well. I mean, we, as I said at the start of the conversation, we've got a decent amount of resources that we're able to allocate, and we're in a position with the security division where we are reinvesting profits. So if we can see that there is, money to be made and profitability around the way that we take this out, we're able to give dedicated heads, part dedicated heads, technical resource, sales resource, the marketing resource, you know, to give you the ability to extend your team out into the UK. So providing you with a multiple number of Chris's effectively, you know, quite quickly as we get started. So we're flexible how this gets built, and it, you know, it's new for us in an extent. You know, we do have other managed services, and we are taking different levels of margin for them based on the fact that, you know, the headcount effectively is with the service provider. So, you know, we have a vendor called Immuniweb, and they have a service which is AI driven, but also, you know, has eyes on it as well at the same time. So we understand that effectively, you know, the service is not going to be providing the level of margin as if it was just a piece of software that had been developed 10 years ago and is continuing to roll and roll and roll. You know? We are flexible in that respect, and I'm happy to continue the conversations to see, you know, how we take this out and what is required from each side to make it work.
Okay.
So Gareth, if you don't mind, you know, obviously this would be distributed to your network of resellers. Do you mind if I ask how many resellers are in that network?
So we have an active base of thousands of resellers. If you started to drill down into security specific, we're probably dealing with, I don't know, 300 to 400 or so of security specific bars. We have a number of managed service providers on top of that, a number of managed security service providers on top of that. But I think there's also the opportunity with a service like this to take it to resellers that aren't necessarily already specialists in security. You know, so what we are trying to do is to go to a reseller that has a certain customer base, but doesn't have the ability to offer their own SOC solution, that doesn't have the ability to offer services, and say, you know, you can take this out, whether it's white labeled, rebranded, or whatever, but this is going to move you into that space. And then we've got a much broader base of resellers, you know, I guess, who are slightly more generalist to take it out to. And then, you know, we have a split in the way that the business is set up. So we have product specialists and security product specialists, and then we have a team of more generalist account managers, and they have access to this broad base of resellers that they're going to be able to take that out to.
Okay. Okay, great. And then, and again, this question is a little bit based on ignorance on my part, but would the service be branded as the reseller service? In essence, would we white label OEM, or would this be a Proficio service?
I think you would probably find a mix of the two. I think for some resellers, it would be interesting for them to put the position to the market that, you know, they're offering their own service, so they would probably want it to white label it. But I think you probably also find some resellers who just wanted to resell it and trade a little bit off the brand name of Proficio as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just another change for us. You know, we're not currently, our operations are not currently in a place where we have done white labeling in the past, an OEM type of service. We have, and that's another discussion that we've had. It, like I said, strategic alliances, we're looking at expanding our different channels and, you know, different opportunities. So OEM is definitely on the radar for us. What we've seen work really well in the past, and is just really simple, is so-and-so brand powered by Proficio.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really easy. So
yeah, I think that's probably what we would try to get to. Is the conversation I had with Chris previously. You know, managed stock by X reseller, powered by Proficio. I think that, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. For ourselves, I think we will be pushing it out as your service, and then see what the resellers look to be able to promote that through into their customers.
I see. Yeah, I think you know, we've seen, just from my perspective in the MDR space, we're seeing, just being honest, we see a lot of our competitors going to almost, some of them have gone to completely reseller only models or channel only models. And so in my opinion, the next evolution of that, of going from a reseller going from a referral to reseller, the next step is distributor, in my opinion. So I see this as a very much necessary step for our business to grow. To be honest, it sounds like you guys would be a great fit for that because of your flexibility and your eagerness to grow in that space as well. I just want to be transparent on the things that we need to put in place in order to make this happen, that we haven't done it. I think I have an idea of what we would want to do to make this very easy to transact. Another piece that we'd want to put in place is like a click-through agreement, where we don't, the last thing any of us wants is to have, long contract negotiations or long 3-way or 4-way price negotiations. I think we want to skip all that. So it comes back to commoditizing, productizing, click-through agreements, and then kind of moving from there. So we have self-scoping capabilities, that I think we could leverage. Brian's probably sweating right now as I say that, but when it comes to like determining sizing, there are some resources out there that we can use for sizing. When it comes to supported device list, I think there's some things we can do to work through those types of discussions. But to be honest, I think from the start, this is going to take quite a bit of co-selling, where Chris is going to have to be involved in the process, in the discussion. And then the more of these that we do, and the more we work through this process, we can start to automate and kind of programatize. I think programatize. I'm going with that. Yeah. A lot of this to make it as transactional as possible.
Yeah, and that works for us. I say, the way that we work with other vendors is quite similar. In the early stages of the relationship, we do depend on the vendor to provide us, with more support, and over time that develops. We have some services that have got to an automated stage already where the onboarding is simpler solutions, but the onboarding is portal based. It's set up pretty much automatically. The payment gateway will take a slice and distribute it. But we understand that it's a process to get from A to B. With that type of service.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, so Gareth, from my perspective, I think Brian and me are going to have some conversations in regard to how we effectively provide that sort of the commercial arrangement and agreement for a partnership, how we productize things, and I totally agree. I think we have to make this as simple as possible. And absolutely, from my perspective, very much happy to walk you through the first set of engagements that we have from a sales perspective. Let's make sure that we do that on your behalf, and then that sort of gets you guys up to speed and into a position where that you're comfortable that you can take it in, but we'll still sit alongside you. So I'm happy to to get that kind of engagement moving. Brian, can we have some conversations this week in regard to maybe the best way that we can start to commercialize this type of channel model?
Yeah, and there's going to be some people that we'll need to include on those initial discussions, like legal and product and whatnot. So, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to get the ball rolling and see what this starts to look like.
Okay. And Gareth, from your perspective, is there anything else you need from us? Do we want to? Obviously, there was one of your product managers who didn't manage to join the call. Do we want him to have a chat? And
I think what would be useful is if we could have another conversation with Mike. I think he's alluded to the possibility. I don't know what it would take to be able to plug the Panda product in for your service to sit on top of it, but that would seem to me to be an immediate opportunity. So I think it would be worth having another conversation technically around that. Anything that we can do that ties into our core base of vendors as well gets buy-in immediately within the business. But if there is a customer base that we can go to straight away, maybe saying there's 500 resellers or something for Panda, we've got people who are ex-Panda who can work their way around them very quickly.
Yeah.
So if there's another technical conversation to see where the starting point would be with our reseller base, then I think that would be really useful as well.
And has the Panda service been integrated into the WatchGuard MSS offering?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, and there isn't an indication of how that's going to look yet. So far, they're keeping Panda kind of as a separate vision.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll see for another quarter or two, how that's going to work out. But equally, I think as Mike was saying, I don't think that's it's not the best developed service, and also there is, to an extent, a reluctance for kind of more enterprise customers to work with Panda. Is viewed very much as an SMB type product. So I think there's still something that we could build on top of that for certain customers. But anything that walks into the existing base, or any message we can take into the existing base, is going to give us a head start, I think.
Okay. It's just the reason I ask. I cut my teeth selling managed security services on WatchGuard about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I did as well. I think it's changed a little bit since then.
All right. All right. Anything else you need from us, Gareth? I mean, I'll circle back with you this week. Any other questions you need to ask of Brian or Brian?
No, that's fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, Brian and Gareth, really appreciate your time. I'll be in touch with probably all four of you at some point during this week.
I look forward to it. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, gents.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye for now.